Hi, hello everyone. My name is Arjun Dev Arora. I am the founder and managing partner of Valence Advisory. We work with funds and founders and help them accelerate their efforts around capital, people, and strategy. And with that, off to John.
Thank you, Arjun. So name's John Lowe. I'm an advisor at Valence Advisory. I'm the lead on leadership, coaching, and communications. Love facilitating both one-on-one and one-to-many. And today we have a wonderful guest, Adam Jackson, who's a serial founder. Hello, Adam. And I'm not going to give away too much about what Adam has done, what he's currently doing. I'm going to leave him to talk and lead the show. So Adam, to start, let's start with the present state of affairs. What is your current role and what are you working on now?
Sure. Well, hey guys, thanks a lot for having me. It's a privilege to be with you. So today we are working on a project called Braintrust. And Braintrust is a talent-controlled, talent-owned marketplace that connects sort of high-end product development, design, engineering talent with generally Fortune 1000 companies that need their help. And that in and of itself is not a new concept, but our sort of business model / network model, the way our ownership structure is structured is actually very unique. So I can go into more detail about how that works at any time.
Please do, at your convenience.
Yeah, sure. So maybe I'll just take a minute or two here and give a little background on Braintrust. Again, my name's Adam. So I'm a software engineer by training. I went to school for computer science at Vanderbilt, moved out here after school, out here to San Francisco, and I've been out here for about 16 years now. In that time, I've started 4 venture-backed companies, all marketplaces, all different categories. The first one was a local shopping business that helped local brick and mortar stores use the internet to advertise their products. And back in 2004, when I started that was a novel concept. We grew that into a national marketplace and were eventually acquired by Intuit and joined the QuickBooks team there as a product manager. After that, I started my second company called DriverSide, which connected car owners with service mechanics that had sort of excess capacity in their bays to work on cars. And so we would connect drivers with these mechanics sort of just in time and use some kind of nifty algorithms at the time and also grew that into a marketplace, or a national marketplace, and were acquired by Advanced Auto Parts, which is it's a big box auto parts retailer, mostly on the East Coast. I took a little bit of time off after that and then was connected with the 2 guys, Phil McGraw and his son, Jay McGraw. And Phil McGraw is better known as Dr. Phil from TV. And these guys are sort of serial entrepreneurs, but with television shows. And they had this cool idea. This is back in 2012 when it's sort of like there's an app for that, was just crushing every category. And so their idea was, there's a shortage of physicians and it's a long wait times in the United States. I mean, this is like pre-COVID, like it was still really bad. And they thought, why don't we just like make a clever app and staff it with great doctors and like have the thing easy to use and like we'll talk about it on our TV show. And so I've linked up with them, and maybe later when we get to serendipity, I can tell that story. But it was a cool match. We built that company. In 2012, I served as CEO for the first 4 years and grew it from basically this little cash pay, didn't take insurance, direct-to-consumer app into what's now one of the largest hospital systems in the country by visit volume. Not by revenue yet, but we're getting there. And it's all virtual. It's all doctors treating people, doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists practicing over video. So there's no buildings involved. So I had a lot of fun building and running that business. About 4 years in, it became a giant healthcare company, and we put in what I like to call a real manager. That's Hill Ferguson, who's our current CEO. And he's just done a phenomenal job of growing the company, and we're hoping we can take it public here someday. If companies ever go public again, then we hope to be one of them. And so I'm still very close to the company. I don't work there anymore day to day. And then I took a little time off and sort of got back to my passion, my roots, which is kind of deep tech and engineering. And at the time, this is about 2016, it was all blockchain. I had bought Bitcoin years before. A friend of mine who runs a chain of internet casinos told me about it back in 2011. And I didn't think too much about it. I just bought a few and unfortunately forgot about them. And then so got back to the technology in 2016 and really became passionate about this concept of a token representing ownership and control in a network of people. And what could that do? How could that change how we organize people, change the economics of networks and that kind of thing. I don't care about remittance. I'm not a payments. I think store value is interesting. Maybe, it's like just not my thing. I've been founding and investing in marketplaces my entire life, right? Like I was born with this business model of connect two people, create a trusted environment to transact, and then take as much rake as you can off every transaction, right? And that's what all of my businesses have done, right? Or some close derivative to that. And almost all the investments I've made have been along those lines. And then along comes this token technology, and it's like, wait a minute, you could program these things to represent, ownership and control in a network instead of shares of a Delaware C Corp. And so this kind of became like a passion project. It became a token economic model looking for a category. And so the concept was simple. Like, what if you could have a network or marketplace? I'm going to use those words interchangeably. What if you could have a network of people, say a two-sided marketplace, for example, sort of be owned and operated by its users instead of a central corporation? And wouldn't that be interesting, right? Like, imagine if Uber had taken some of its ownership in the early days and given it to its drivers, and then gave more of it to the drivers as they maintained 5-star ratings and invited more drivers and invited more riders, and sort of just like programmatically distributed this control of the network out to its users. When I say ownership, I don't mean like a stock or a security, like returning dividends or profit. It's actually the opposite, right? Like, these networks could actually operate as nonprofits. It's not a profit return mechanism. It's just a unit of control and influence over the network. And so back to the Uber example, imagine if the control of that network had been given to the participants early. You still need that entrepreneur, right? You still need that Travis in the center to break ground and really push something into existence. Like, we're not saying you don't need that leadership from the start, but as big networks and marketplaces grow, the incentives become misaligned between the operators and the participants, right? And what I'm saying is that properly configured token economy, that doesn't need to be true anymore, right? You can align the incentives between the operators and the participants. And so that's where Braintrust came from. So back to my Uber example, if Uber had sort of more fairly compensated its users, fast forward 10 years on IPO day, instead of this $85 billion IPO making, 6 or 7 dudes in San Francisco, multi-billionaires, and then, like a third of, and these are actual numbers, it's like a third of the Uber it's half Uber drivers are living at or below the poverty line. This is, by the way, pre-COVID, so I'm sure it's much worse now. But so according to the Georgetown University study, half of the Uber drivers are living at or below the poverty line, and many of them are even living in their cars during the week to provide the service, right? While like 7 guys in San Francisco became billionaires. Not only is it intensely unfair, it's just bad business, right? Like, that's not good for any of us. So this new Braintrust token economy, it's very different. It basically inverts the model. You give the ownership and control of the network out to all of the users in proportion to how much those users are helping. So with the Braintrust token, for example, the only way to get our token is to invite more talent to the network, or invite more clients to the network, or vet our talent, or keep a good reputation. Do things that help Braintrust, right? And Braintrust itself is a nonprofit foundation. It's not business. It's not returning profits or dividends to anyone. What it ends up doing is the token represents control and voting and governance of the network. And so the users can decide what new categories do we get into, and how do we govern ourselves, and how do we shape the brand, all these things. And that doesn't mean there still can't be strong leaders, helping push that along, but it's much more of a cooperative feel rather than, a couple people in San Francisco taking all the shots and then taking as much value out of the middle as you can. It's basically a technology and a business model to destroy the middleman and give all that value that was being taken back to the people who use the network.
Wow, nicely said. So as you think about Braintrust and the future challenges you face in growing it out, what are some of the non-obvious challenges that you've thought through, and how can you control for them if you can? And if you can't, what sort of serendipity are you hoping will come through to help accelerate your vision?
Well, we are living through one of the most dramatic bits of tragedy and hopefully serendipity coming, with this COVID-19 pandemic that we're living through. All of the downsides of this have obviously been well documented. Our business, clients are suffering, and therefore our business will suffer with them. And that's a sad thing. The serendipity, I think, and the silver lining, it's a bit early, but what we're seeing here is Braintrust is sort of promoting this concept of, hire remote workers to augment your core business. And we chose, by the way, I use this ride sharing example for Braintrust. Braintrust, we're not in the gig economy. We're in this sort of higher end, almost gig economy. We connect really high-end freelancers, most of them ex-Google, ex-Netflix, ex-Amazon, who don't want corporate jobs anymore, right? They actually want to be their own boss. So they love Braintrust because Braintrust isn't taking a bunch of fees from them, right? We don't have a big rake on our marketplace. So, we're solving that problem for these companies where companies before might have had some hesitancy with Braintrust. They said, well, a lot of companies, before 2 weeks ago, were pretty against work from home, right? They didn't trust remote work. And I think there used to be good reasons to not trust remote work. I don't think there's any good reasons now with all the amazing technology we have, like what we're talking over and Asana and things like that. But 2 weeks ago, the whole country basically was forced to figure out how to work from home. And I think there's some serendipity in that for Braintrust. I think that'll be a silver lining on this, pretty terrible tragedy we're all living through.
So well said. And Arjun can speak to this, and that checks out anecdotally across the board with what we've observed across venture funds, GPs, and also founders and their teams. Sorry for interrupting, Adam. Was there anything you wanted to add to that?
On the serendipity side, I think the framework from which I've always looked at life is don't freak out about the stuff you can't control. What you can control is you can hone your skills, you can build good relationships, be a good person, operate with integrity. And if you just keep doing that every day, the bad stuff will eventually turn into good stuff, right? And the good stuff will be even better. And so, it's I'm a very type A, kind of control freak, if you will. I've been called many times. And so for people like me, it's difficult to not get upset when things don't go your way. And so the framework I've built for myself is just you can, let yourself experience that emotion and then walk through it, get past it. And you can find serendipity in almost everything at that point.
Really well said. And Adam, as a serial entrepreneur and having had some time on the block through different economic climates, was there a time where you experienced a significant challenge as an entrepreneur and really you didn't have the wisdom of life experience or foresight to be able to pull yourself out? What did you do? How did you navigate that? Were there mentors who were guiding lights, or was it, and it could have been someone who reported to you, right? Mentors can come in all shapes and forms. They could be someone who worked with you. They could be a co-founder or someone you grab coffee off, right? If you could unpack that a bit, I think it would be very relevant for emerging founder talent, especially during this economic climate, and existing who are really faced with a challenge that they're empowered to solve, but just because they don't have a precedence, they could use some words of wisdom from you.
I have a lot of stories. I can tell, maybe one of the poignant ones in a second. But again, this for me, it comes back to frameworks. You pointed at, you hinted at it earlier, right? Your mentors can come from any direction. And so, surround yourself with amazing people. One thing, that's a cliche, and of course, everyone tries to hire amazing people, and A players hire A players, and B's hire C's, and C's hire D's. And we get all that. One thing, since this is sort of a startup topic we're talking about here, one thing startups get a little discouraged by, and I did too, and maybe this will be helpful to those folks, is startups also often say, well, we can't afford the best talent. The best talent might be at Facebook or Google or whatever, and there's no way we could afford those salaries. And the truth is you could use some stock options and you can get your talent that way, but there's not a direct correlation between financial requirements and expertise or horsepower or dedication. I've had plenty of expensive people who were terrible, and I've had plenty of, I shouldn't say plenty, some, and I've had some, really inexpensive or sub-market rate people who are just incredible. And so don't drop that preconception that you have to pay for quality. It's just not true with people. I think quality people deserve to be compensated fairly. Absolutely. And so, one of the doors that opened for me was, this kind of goes back to why we started Braintrust, but talent is spread evenly across the world. Opportunity is not, right? That's just the world we live in. And so, we don't have a single full-time engineer or product person on Braintrust. They're all freelancers from our network, and very few of them live in the United States. There's nothing wrong with the people who live in this. There's awesome American talent, but there's awesome talent in Eastern Europe and in South America and in Asia. So, that's like one thing I would say, don't drop any preconceptions around and open your mind up a little bit. You talk, that's a general, you talk more like, I can tell you like a specific story of just getting torpedoed and how.
Please do.
I mean, and Arjun knows this story well too. I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, your job is to get hit with torpedoes, and we're certainly getting hit with one right now. I'll tell you that, as all of us are. But, talking about having mentors and smart people around you. I mean, when I think of the word mentor, I never had a formal mentor. It's a regret I have. I should have gone out of my way to find one. And it's, shocking. I hear these stories about, I just emailed Tim Cook and he was cool, whatever. So I never did that, but I got this chance at Dr. On Demand to work with Dr. Phil McGraw, who's this, just unbelievably driven, successful, dedicated guy. And he's one of the most, if not the most, behind Oprah, the most successful person on television. I got to work with he and his son, Jay. Jay's my age and also a really sharp guy. And the three of us started Dr. On Demand. And, there were a couple times there where we were dealing with regulatory problems, some serious, end your business life kind of legal problems. Only because telemedicine, the type of medicine Dr. On Demand practices over video, used to be kind of a gray area from a regulatory standpoint. It's actually really clear now, and thank God it is, because it's helping quite a bit these days. And so I was, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm this internet dork in San Francisco running this national medical practice, and I had a lot of uncomfortable moments. So I would there were a handful of investors that I really trusted. I'll just name, Brian Roberts from Venrock is such a high integrity person, really was there for me a lot. I really looked up to Dr. Phil. I mean, this is I never really watched his TV show. I didn't know his shtick, but he is he's all business. The guy takes life so seriously. He's so strong-willed and so smart and so well prepared and is not afraid of anything, right? And we put these challenges head on, and there's, lots of colorful language, and it really taught me how to really fight. And if you're going to pick any quality as a founder CEO, it has to be perseverance, right? It just that's the only thing you absolutely have to have, right? You have to fight until you're dead. And, otherwise it's just not going to work out. You're going to rely on luck. I always have good lawyers, right? For Dr. On Demand had and still have the best lawyers in that business. Today, for Braintrust, we operate in this sort of murky regulatory world again. I don't like businesses like this. I just end up finding myself in them. And so, have great investors, great lawyers, surround yourself with great people. And if you can be lucky, like I have 4 out of 4 times having great co-founders, it makes all the difference. I could never, you cannot do it alone, right? It's very hard when you're building a big system like this.
Because we still have a few minutes, just to synthesize, most industries currently have been torpedoed in light of recent mass events. Some have not, obviously, but for a lot of the founders, trying to navigate this uncertain and challenging territory, what kind of words of advice would you like to share, if any? And if you don't, that's fine, but I kind of want to leave that open to you.
Yeah, well, and I'll try to say things that haven't been said over and over. There's a lot of kind of generic advice out there, hey, go raise some venture debt and draw that down, right? And that kind of bullshit.
Yeah, we appreciate the real feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, or yeah, I mean, there's salary cuts and layoffs and all that stuff, and I've been through it all. And they're very hard things to go. I would say, look, your employees, your customers, your vendors, they're all going through this too, right? So one thing my co-founder at Braintrust, Gabe, he's a phenomenal operator, a brilliant and just a good human being, a really great person. And I work exceptionally well together. And one of the things we rolled out as soon as this COVID thing started happening is allay everyone's fears, we're in a fear death spiral right now. And so say, look, we got your backs, guys. We had to trim things and extend runway like everybody else. We're not immune to that. Give people the time they need and just be a human to them. And then we did the same thing with our vendors, right? We called the PR firm, same thing. Then we called everybody, our lawyer, the other people we work with. We're like, hey guys, I know we're usually playing in the NFL here and we're hitting hard and it's, it gets bloody sometimes, but this is going to be okay. If we lose a couple months here, no one's going to die. Knock on wood, literally no one's going to die. A lot of people say it. I just think if you're a leader, you're in a unique ability to actually actually make a difference in other people's anxiety levels.
Great. Adam, I think that's a great place to drop the mic. Thank you.
Adam, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for taking the time.